In a world where most people watch movies and then forget about them, these brave heroes join forces to watch them again and then talk about them. Join them in their epic journey as they go back in time, a decade and beyond, to revisit and break down films from a vast array of genres. Do these movies hold up over time? Are they classics? Find out on Retro Movie Roundtable. Starring your hosts, Brian Fry, Chad Robinson, Dustin Melbardis, Lizzy Haynes, and Russell Guest. Coming now to headphones in your ears.
Welcome all you lords, ladies, and knights to the Retro Movie Roundtable, the podcast where we watch movies and then talk about them. I'm your host, Chad Robinson, and joining me today is my good friend and co-host, Lizzy Haynes. Lizzy, how you doing?
I'm doing great. Excited to be here.
Yeah, me too. We have a first-time guest coming to you from Los Angeles, California. It is our special guest, Laura Hunter Drago. Laura, how you doing this evening?
I'm good. How are you guys?
Well, you're so good. Thank you so much for joining us. Laura is an award-winning film producer, screenwriter, actress, model living out in LA. She's a champion of women in the film industry. Laura, are there any of your efforts you want to tell our listeners about?
Sure. I just released a new audio drama podcast this week called The Crime at Camp Ashwood, and we also just won the Austin Film Festival with that project. So super exciting week for
So
it.
cool.
Yeah,
Congrats.
thank
That's
you.
awesome.
That is
Yes.
amazing.
Yes, check this out. That is great. Well, we usually like to get to know our guests, so we have a couple of quick warm-up questions before we get into our movie today. First question, our movie is going to star Reese Witherspoon. She's had an awesome career so far. Laura, we'll start with you. What's your favorite Reese Witherspoon performance? Loaded question.
Okay, so this is really hard for me. She's my hero. We share a birthday, and I believe her given name is also Laura. So
It is, yes.
I feel very connected to Reese, even though we don't know each other. It's almost impossible to choose. I'm going to go with Legally Blonde because to me it's the most iconic, and it was such a big influence on me growing up. So I have to go with that one, but it's hard.
That's a great choice. Lizzy, what's your choice?
I agree. I love Reese Witherspoon. She was always been a favorite actress of mine. And there's so many movies. I mean, this was really tough for me. But I had to go with Cruel Intentions. That movie was a kind of almost like a mature awakening movie in this for almost every single person in my generation. That was just such a first real teen drama that dealt with issues, and it was so complicated because they're all so horrible. And but Reese was the shining light of that movie, and in so many ways, the movie really balanced on her shoulders because without it, you're just watching these deplorable, horrible people, and she's so lovable, and she makes the movie work.
Oh, that's a good choice. I'm a big Sarah Michelle Gellar fan, so
Yes.
Intentions is a good one for me. My favorite performance is a special one for my wife and I. It's June Carter in Walk the Line.
Oh, yes.
Oh,
Her big
now
one.
I might take mine back. That is it's such a great.
She is wonderful. That entire movie is wonderful. That's one we watch quite a bit. Speaking of movies you've watched, Laura, what was the last movie you've seen?
So I watched for the first time ever the original Scream last week.
Lizzy, go get your shirt.
I wore that today. I literally wore that all day today. my
I
no
don't know
union
how
up,
I've
my
never
ghost face sweatshirt. That's so funny. Oh,
Yeah,
that's my favorite franchise of all time.
I don't know how. I admit I'm a big horror fan. I don't know why. I've just never seen. I was like, I need to sit down right now. This
Yes.
is a
What did you
travesty.
think?
I loved it. Of course.
Yeah.
It was fantastic. Yeah.
Yes.
Yes. Okay, you can stay on the show.
That's right.
That's it.
Lizzy, how about you?
I watched Saw X in theaters.
Okay,
Aaron and
yeah.
I went and saw it. We had seen just about every single, at least the first several Saw movies in theaters. I think once they started moving into like the Jigsaw and Spiral ones, we just waited until we could stream them. But because I'd spent so much of my young adult life seeing those movies in theaters, we had to just go for it. And we loved it. We thought it was awesome. Like a very good nod to like the old formula of Saw. Very good.
Yeah. When you're killing people that are fake treating cancer, it doesn't feel as bad. So,
Yeah, you really don't feel bad.
so Tobin Bell's awesome. As for me, it's sort of in the horror genre, I guess. My daughter is very into the Disney musical phase, so we got Zombies 3, and
Nice.
it's very much like Zombies 1 and 2, where we introduce new species. This time it's aliens, and we're discriminatory against the aliens. Although this one was a little more justified. They came in, started blowing up cars, and then wanted peace. It was very strange. But first we had zombie discrimination, then we had werewolf, and now aliens. We all learned the lesson of,
Yep.
hey, these aliens are pretty cool. So it's got good morals for kids. The music's all right. So if you're out there with little ones, you could do worse. Lizzy, hopefully we're not going to do worse. Now, what movie are we covering today?
We are covering Election.
That's right, Election from 1999. This stars Matthew Broderick, aforementioned Reese Witherspoon, Chris Klein's debut, and Jessica Campbell. We have a budget of $25 million. It does not do well in the box office domestically. It makes $14.9 million. That places it at number 98. Coming in at 97 was The Corruptor, and 99, Music of the Heart. I do not know these movies.
Music of the Heart had that amazing NSYNC song. It was like an NSYNC Gloria Estefan duet.
Okay,
No, only me. It's
speaking.
just
Oh
me.
my gosh,
I'm the only one who
I
knows.
was admittedly a Backstreet Boys girly, so
I
maybe
was
that's
too,
why I don't
so.
know it. But
I was looking to Lizzy to bail me out there.
no, I'm sorry. I don't normally. I'll sing a line of it if I know it, but I don't know that one.
Well, the number one we all know, it was Star Wars Episode 1, The Phantom Menace. Makes a lot of money. Election, however, I'm not going to groan for you, Russell. That's overdone. IMDb rating 7.3 for Election. The Rotten Tomatoes critics tomato meter, they love this movie. It is at 92%. And like all dark black comedies, it's a little lower on the audience score. It's 79%, but still faring very, very well. Does get an Academy Awards nominee for Best Adapted Screenplay, Golden Globes for Reese Witherspoon, Best Actress, Independent Spirit Awards winner, wins 3 for Best Feature, Best Screenplay, Best Direction. Gets an LA Film Critics Association win for Next Generation Award, National Society of Film Critics winner for Reese Witherspoon, Best Actress, Writers Guild of America Award for Best Adapted Screenplay. People love this movie. Laura, this was on your short list. We chose this movie off of your short list. I'm going to start with your background with this movie. Had you seen it before? If you hadn't, what were you, or if you have, what were your expectations revisiting it this time? Does it hold up?
Yeah, I had seen it not when it first came out. I think I was a little too young in 99. I want to say I saw it like mid 2000s. And then I've seen it several times since because I really enjoyed it. It makes me think of, I don't know, what I think of independent film. This movie is like that for me growing up. But yeah, it was interesting. It's been a while since I've seen it. And I had a bit of a different reaction to some of the storylines, especially
I'm sure.
just in light of like the Me Too movement. I think like the before and after of that definitely made me look at the Tracy Flick character even a little differently than I had when I was young. So that was an interesting, interesting experience.
Yeah, absolutely. And Lizzy, had you seen this movie before?
I had, yeah. I saw this movie, I want to say maybe in late high school. So probably around the same time that you said you had, like early to mid 2000s. And I feel like when I first saw it, this is one of those great things about teenage dramas is they have all of this surface humor that you see when you're young, and all of the adult themes just fly right over your head. And then when you watch it, 10, 15 years later as an adult, you're like, how did I miss all of this? Like, I just was not paying attention. And so I agree. A lot of the Tracy stuff, like, I like clicked with me, but not, I think, in a way of like truly understanding the gravity of what it would be like to have that teacher student relationship. Like, so there was a lot of themes that definitely hit a little different as an adult, but I really still enjoy it. I think the humor is still on point, and it's a very, very cleverly written movie, and I had a great time watching it.
Excellent. I am going to be the newbie here. I had not seen this movie. And Russell, who is the creator of this podcast, he's warning me the entire time. He's texting me. He's like, I hope Lizzy doesn't pick this movie.
Oh, gosh.
And he said, this is not a Chad movie. And it does kind of have the formula of not a Chad movie. I did not know this was the director of Sideways, which is my go-to for movies that are improperly named comedies. Like Sideways has a funny scene. It is not a comedy. And so it had a lot of things going against it. But without giving too much away, I think my concerns were misplaced. And I'm here to tell Russell he was wrong. I did enjoy this movie. So that was good. I have family out in Nebraska. My wife's family is from there. So it's always nice to see the Omaha setting. And that seems to be Alexander Payne's kind of thing. He likes putting movies out in Nebraska. So if you have not seen Election, or it's been a while, Lizzy's going to refresh your memory here in a minute. We are going to take a quick ad break, and when we're back, Lizzy will spoil the movie.
Welcome to the All 80s Movies Podcast.
I'm Bill.
And I'm Jason, and this is the podcast where we talk about the blockbusters, the flops, and everything in between from one of the freshest decades for movies, the 1980s. So whether you're a brain, a jock, a valley girl, or a Jedi, we've got some 80s classics for you.
Do these movies stand the test of time? Are we discovering something new? Is there an 80s movie we're finally watching for the first time?
Join us each week as we dive into the cinematic nostalgia that inspired and influenced a generation. From the hits to the cult classics, we'll discuss our earliest memories, favorite scenes, fun facts, and our not-so-favorite movie moments, too.
It's the All 80s Movies Podcast, now available on all major streaming platforms. Please subscribe and happy listening.
And we're back. Last chance before Lizzy breaks down Election. If you haven't seen it, go rewatch it. Lizzy, tell us what it's about.
Jim McAllister was a teacher with a true love of molding young minds and enriching the youth at Carver High. That was until Tracy Flick, a massively overachieving senior, runs for student body president, to which he is the advisor. Mr. McAllister sees Tracy as more than just an average, ambitious student, but additionally as a student who had previously had an affair with his colleague and best friend Dave, a man whom he still shares a, quote, friendship with his wife, ex-wife, I should say, Linda. Jim cannot imagine a world where he has to work daily with Tracy, and quite frankly is intimidated by all he knows, so he encourages Paul, the it boy jock who recently hurt his leg in football, to look into student politics and run for president. Meanwhile, Paul's sister Tammy is a closeted young girl in love with her friend Lisa, who is not ready to acknowledge their relationship. Lisa goes for Paul and begins dating him as a way to backhand Tammy. And so now Tammy wants her revenge. She is going to run for president. Now the race is on. Tracy is utterly gobsmacked by how she could once be running unopposed, and now it's come to this. In an act of rage, she rips down all of Paul's posters, an act for which Tammy later takes the blame in order to transfer schools. Jim knows that it was Tracy deep down. He cannot let her get away with this. When it's time to count the ballots, Tracy wins, but Jim fixes the election in favor for Paul. His plan, however, only lasts but a few days as the tossed ballots for Tracy's win is recovered, and Jim can do nothing but resign. As Tracy mentions in the opening scene, destiny comes to fruition, and Jim is left wondering how he got here.
Very good. Very good. Yeah, you mentioned earlier, Lizzy, about this being a teen comedy. Our director here, Alxander Payne, he did not want to do a teen comedy. And I'm positive MTV approaching him did not help the initial impression. But they did talk him down, convinced him this was more of an adult comedy, and you both have alluded to it. There are a lot more adult themes than what you would get in, I think, of this era of Not Another Teen Movie, which is actually a pretty fun movie.
Yes.
You see a unique side of Chris Evans that I don't know if he regrets or not.
Right. I bet he does.
Yes. Yeah, speaking of bananas in this movie.
That's right.
So does this work, now that you've revisited this as adults, how's the humor hitting you as an adult? How did that change for you, having seen this before?
I mean, I still find it very funny. There's a lot going on that is hilarious, especially there's like a whole sequence where everyone is praying about the election the next day, and also just the sort of heightened idea that a high school election could mean this much to anyone is great, which is super highlighted by the sister's speech where she's like, no one ever cares about this, like, if you vote for me, I'll end
there will be no more assemblies ever again.
End your misery. No, it's very funny. And also I think to the adult themes, something that I had forgotten or maybe didn't realize as much the first time I saw it is that Matthew Broderick's character really is the protagonist of the film. Like it's centered on him and sort of his overall bad decision making. So I think it's set in this high school, but it's very much to me about the teachers and sort of this idea of adults who missed out on their own youth or their own dreams and being a little bit envious of the kids. So I think it's got that adult angle.
Yeah, I agree. I think it was, now that I'm watching it as an adult, this movie was absolutely written for adults. And I think particularly the adult that has gone to public high school, like this idea of like, I've lived this life in some way. It's kind of in the same vein how the movie Waiting, I don't know if you guys have ever seen that, but it's one of those movies where like you maybe think it's funny, but you can only really appreciate it if you've worked in the food industry. Like you can really understand the nuance. And I think that is what I really think the director was going for and the writer was going for here, was this idea of like, we all, for the most part, understand what it's like to go to high school. And for the most of us as well, like to a public high school. And we all know that one girl who's just like so overachieving and just kind of taking these hyperbolic tropes and then almost putting you through the vantage point and lens of Matthew Broderick, but then also being able to laugh at, like you said earlier, Laura, like his just horrible decision-making. And the duality of that is really fun to watch.
I was really impressed by Alexander Payne, how much he was. It's not just like a teen satirization. He's getting the adults, like you mentioned, the parents living vicariously through their kids, but there's satire for politics. He's making allusions of, okay, apples and oranges, and Paul astutely says, sometimes I like bananas, and this all comes from a screenplay that's kind of inspired by the chaos from Ross Perot entering an election and just taking away a massive amount of votes. A third party just can't do that nowadays. As well as we've got some satire of authority figures. All of the principals, the vice principals, and even these parents, they're acting in this almost like Breakfast Club kind of way in how they talk to these kids. Walt, when he interrupts the assembly to yell at the kids because they're interrupting Tracy's speech, it's just so over the top and just like, okay, this is your thing. Like this is your area of life and you were just going to guard it. what was the most effective? Like what area was working the best for you?
In terms of,
Did you enjoy the teenage satire, or maybe the authorities, or the politics?
I think for me the political angle of it is the strongest, but it's because I think everything else kind of ties back into it, and sort of this idea that an election, or like wanting to be spotlighted by winning an election, is very similar to then Jim wanting to go and have this affair and have the attention on him in that way. So to me, I think it centers around the election very well, hence the name of the movie. So yeah, I think the politics for me are the central kind of plot.
Yeah, it is. That is fun, and they do kind of shoehorn. He's getting all sides, but she does wind up working for a fake Republican representative of Nebraska
Yes.
in the end. So we get that in the end. Lizzy, what was the highlight for you?
I love the relationships. I'm such a character development person, and I just love the juxtaposition between everybody. You know, I love the relationship that Jim has with Tracy. You know, he just, like, even in the very beginning when she's running, like, Mr. McAllister, and like, I got all my signatures, and she's like, would you just take them now? Like, can you please just have them now? Like, and that you can just feel how exhausted he is of her. And then that quickly moves into just complete and utter loathing of her. And just, it's almost like just her breathing irritates him. And I love that relationship. I love, love, love Paul Metzger. I think that he is like the sweet little puppy dog character of this movie. And I think of, you have these people kind of almost like in Cruel Intentions, like I mentioned earlier, you have these characters that are all really deeply flawed, and then you just have like this sweet innocent little guy. He's like, even in his prayer to God, he's just like, you know, like, no matter what happens, like, it's okay. Like, I just, you know, and also like really pray for my sister, because like I hope she's okay too. Meanwhile, like, everybody is, you know,
Yes.
Tracy is like, could you just like take Paul out for me? Like, just like wipe him off the slate. And I love that relationship. I also think that even Tammy's like kind of more minor part, I think, is hilarious. Like, you know, her big plan to get put into Sacred Heart. And I love how each and every storyline it's equally significant and equally funny. And then just putting it all together is dynamite.
Yeah, those character dynamics were so good. And I really think Paul is at the center for me of what kept this movie from going into territory that I don't like, was just his sweet innocence from all directions. It kept it from dwelling in this otherwise pretty dark place. And we've talked about it too, because this is something that stuck out to me. You both mentioned the Me Too movement. There's no way the school isn't more aware of Dave and Tracy, right? Like, there's not even a rumor mentioned in this movie around the other students. Does that not seem
Oh,
weird?
that's a good point. Yeah, between the students, definitely, I think there would have been more. Although now I've seen a few documentaries pretty recently about like long-term teacher-student affairs that went unspoken among staff for like 10 years. But you're right, there would be rumblings at least. So that's a good point. That's a little oversight.
I think so too. I think the maybe only thing that has going for it is that they tried to lay the groundwork that she doesn't have a lot of friends because she's so busy.
Yeah.
But I think still, even so, I think that there had to have been somebody that caught maybe even the slightest of interactions, and then, you know, things like that spread like wildfire. But for me, I think what irritated me the most is that Dave just literally got a slap on the wrist. Like, he's sitting there crying in the, you know, like, we're in love. And then he, you know, of course his wife divorces him, and then but like that's really it. Like, he loses his job and his marriage, but like there's no actual criminal repercussions. And it's like, you committed a crime. Like, this is the big deal. And they kind of treated it like almost as if it was a stain that they just didn't want to acknowledge, which I imagine unfortunately has happened in the past. So I think that's probably something that's really, really different. If Tracy was to pan to what Dave is doing now, he wouldn't be putting price stickers on, on body wash or whatever it was he was doing. He'd be doing something much different, probably in a jumpsuit.
Yeah, I get the impression it's a small school that's just trying not to make waves, and I'm sure this unfortunately happens all the time.
Yeah.
I do think you need the female student to be the one in the affair, because if it was a male student, there's zero chance that this isn't out there in the school. So Tracy, she does seem to keep this under wraps, even when Jim's kind of alluding to it with her. She quickly threatens Jim of, you don't want to go there. This will be bad things. So I think she knows she has some power over the school of, hey, if this gets out, the school is in a ton of trouble. Jim, you knew, principal knew, everybody's going down in flames. So she's very in control of that situation at that point in time.
Though, I mean, I think you're right that she's in control, but I will say that this viewing of it, I felt much more sorry for her, and felt even I didn't notice so much in Reese's performance, but it's definitely there, of like this sort of heavy after effects of something like that, where she's not really dealt with it, but like it's coming. So I do think I had judged her a little bit when I saw this as a teenager. And now I'm like, oh my gosh, like what a horrible thing. They even did a very good job of like that, whatever school club meeting where he kind of propositions her initially, where it's very clear that he's kind of pointing out, well, you don't have any friends and you don't, you need someone, right. And very predatory. So yeah, that's interesting, just on, years down the road to look at something differently.
Oh, certainly. Her mom was a divorcee who's pushing her in every direction. She's writing letters of how do I succeed to Connie Chung and Elizabeth Dole. And just the immense amount of pressure put on by her mom. And yeah, she's not making friends. She's already a bit of an odd duck in the first place, but it's not helped by any of her surroundings. And then we have Dave take advantage of her. So that's... Going through high school, did you know someone like Tracy? Was that someone in your life?
Yes, I did.
Lizzy did?
Yeah, I did.
Was it you?
No, it was no. I did not have any affiliation with student government or anything like that, I don't think anybody would have referred to me as an overachiever. If anything, I was the kid that my teachers were exhausted by, probably equally, but for totally different reasons. I was like the annoying kid so my brother is still very, very smart. And so my older brother, so when I would go into a class that if they had previously taught my brother, they'd be so excited, being like, oh my gosh, it's another Wilder. And I'm like, this is be so great. You're Ellis's sister. So you obviously are just as smart. And I was just so super talkative and rambunctious and hyper. So no, not me. She was actually very lovely though. Like she was very ambitious. And so because of that, she did not have very many friends, and she was a gymnast. And so she was on the fast track for preliminaries for the Olympics and whatnot, and did a bunch of other stuff in school. She was very, very lovely, but she was definitely a loner.
Yeah, they had Reese shadow a couple of students. She worked as a transfer student for 2 weeks in this Omaha high school. Awesome. I don't know if any of the kids really bought that or not, but because Reese is 23 years old, but yeah. The girl that's escorting her around was pretty much Tracy Flick, but far less annoying. She was cheerleader. She was into every single activity, and she was just a really out there person. Like, go get her. I tried for student government. Part of my issues with this movie is I may have trended towards the Tracy Flick territory, and people like Tracy did not get elected. it was just universally whoever was the most popular. Like Paul wins my school's election in a landslide. And I would point out, hey, this person's going to, I wouldn't say it, but this person's going to be terrible at this job. I will actually care. And we haven't had a high school reunion planned for like a decade.
I haven't had one either. The Tammy would have gotten elected at my school for sure.
Really?
Like
Okay.
it's like a joke. Like that was like our prom kings and queens were all like the burnouts that like people would write in. And
You had the anarchists.
That's funny.
So yeah, kind of.
I actually
kind of
went to Catholic high school, but it felt very much like this. I have definite Tracy Flick tendencies myself. Like super type A. Very much was like trying to be into everything, but I never ran for student government. We did have a girl who ran unopposed every year. And one every year. And I do actually remember a teacher at one point saying, someone should run against her. Just nothing against the girl. She was perfectly fine. But someone was like, we could make this a little more interesting. So I was laughing at that when I was rewatching this last night. Like, oh yeah, that happened.
Yeah, wouldn't you like an orange sometimes?
Yes,
exactly.
The funniest thing to me was like in the beginning of class or the lecture, like she'd raise her hand. You could see it on his face. He was like, oh my gosh, like, can anybody else answer this question? Like, I just do not want to call on her. And I knew so many people.
The great like freeze frame of her face where it's just like the worst angle. And then such a nice moment at the end when he's in the museum and now he's like a museum teacher, and there's a little girl who raises her hand and is trying to answer the question. It's the same thing. But that struck me too, where I was like, oh, he really just doesn't like, maybe it's girls, like women who want to have something to say. So that was another thing that I hadn't seen on the original watch.
That's an interesting angle. Yeah. I get it though. On a much smaller level, I teach Sunday school, and there are a few people that just want to answer every time. And it's like, yes, you have the right answer. I don't want to call on you, though. This class needs to go for an hour. Can one of the nonverbal ones in the back, can you please answer the question?
Yeah.
So I get that, but yeah, let's talk about Jim McAllister. He is our teacher of the year several years in a row, and at first he's sort of this supportive friend. We find out that support is not so great later on. He's awkwardly trying to start a family in about the most emasculating way possible. That's a horrible scene, and. We watch him slowly lose his grip on his life. Is Tracy the catalyst for this spiral, or is it something else?
Oh, I think it's just bleak for him. I think she just showed up after a long slog of the same old. This is the thing. Tracy's not the only thing going on in his world. He's got a whole side action about to happen. So he's looking for other things, generally speaking, I think.
I totally agree. I think Tracy's a total projection. It's like he can't communicate like what's wrong in his real life, like whether or not maybe it's he isn't ready to have children. He doesn't want to have children. Maybe he says that his wife is his complete rock, but he obviously is willing to have an affair on her. So like there's cracks somewhere. And I just think that he isn't in a place where he has the confidence to be able to look inward as like what is actually wrong. And so there's just all this pent up emotion and he just pushes it all onto Tracy. It's like, here's this person that annoys me. And so I'm just going to refocus all of my frustration on you. And I just wrong place at the wrong time.
Okay. I first watch, I took it in a different direction. I feel like Dave and Tracy, like that affair broke something in Jim. It seems to have opened a world of possibilities because he almost becomes afraid of Tracy. And I think it's not just because she's annoying, but it starts being sexual.
Yeah.
Because he's got that scene with his wife and then it's Linda's face on the back of her head, poorly like Photoshop, but then it's Tracy's. And I think he may see a little bit of Dave in himself of, okay, now I'm awakened to, I don't know if he's truly attracted to her, but he views this as a possibility
Yeah.
of, he's not interested in his wife anymore. He's just looking and like, if I spend time with her, I'm going to be Dave. I'm going to have Dave's life. And ironically, it's a lot worse. He does so much worse than Dave in trying to avoid being Dave. But yeah, that's
a good point. I see that.
I like your point of view too. I mean, is Jim too dislikable though? I mean, he's cheating on his wife. He's covering for Dave. He manipulates Paul. He embarrasses poor Larry, who's just doing his job. I would be Larry in this situation. And then he rigs the election. That's a lot of stuff to go through.
No, I mean, I like that he's so flawed. I feel like it'd be a hard sell to get a studio to make this movie right now. But I enjoy how flawed he is because I think he's I think this man exists. So,
oh yeah,
for sure.
I like it. And I think it's sort of just, a story of a downward spiral. So in terms of the movie, I don't mind that he's kind of the worst. I feel for him a bit because I think you can see the sort of like longing for some different life, and maybe he just could never name what it was. And so now it's come to this, but I don't mind how bad he is. I think it's kind of fun for this film.
Yeah. I think we can all relate on some level to what it feels like to really feel in your heart that you are trying your best to be a good person, but yet when you're faced with circumstances that you like, and you're in a place where you didn't expect yourself to be in, and you kind of have that like retrospect, like, how did this even happen? Like, I feel like, and I think on some scale, we all have experienced that. And obviously this is like a very hyperbolic version, but I think to your point, like it just shows the humanity in him, and he's not a very likable guy, but you can see that somewhere in there is somebody that really wants to be. And so you kind of just root for him. Like you're just watching somebody hit rock bottom. And so you do have that feel for him, but there is absolutely a side of him that gives me the ick as well, like for sure. So it's, but it's fun to watch. Like the duality of that is really fun. So he's a fun protagonist.
The ick is definitely, most of the things he does are so pathetic. The hotel scene is just absolutely pathetic. I'm sure if you all walked into that, you'd be like, this is sad. This is
so bad. It's so bad.
And then he calls several pseudo-threatening messages, but then I love you. It's like, oh, that's just no.
God. Even the way he first propositions her, like they go to the mall together as friends, which by the way is also like kind of odd, like that they would just like go by themselves to the mall. And then on the way home, he's just like, should we get a room? Like
right.
that is just so bizarre to me. And like, if that were me and I was in that position, like I went to the mall with like one of my friends' husbands, and then he said something like that, like first of all, like I'm telling your wife, like 100%, and then second of all, like I'm never talking to you again. Like we're like the relationship is totally shattered. Like it was very gross. Like her reaction to it is probably exactly how I would have reacted. That just like very disgusted look on her face of like, that's not funny and
right,
you're gross. So she needs to do better.
well, hopefully we get a sequel and Linda has done better because
Linda's done better.
It's all Linda now.
Yeah, her picker is way off.
Yeah. Yep. And our third parties in this election, we've got Paul who enters. We've talked about him. He's just a sweet, popular kid. Everything's going right. But his sister, Tammy, she is just this rebellious tornado going through. She feels like straight out of the Breakfast Club.
Yes.
Do you all like the anarchy that Tammy's bringing to the table?
Oh, yeah. Definitely.
Yes.
Definitely. I think she's one of my favorite characters in this. I love that she truly gets what she wants too. She's one of the only ones who like I think has a clear like she gets to go to her new school. She had a plan. She made it
Yeah.
all happen. She's fun. Yeah, I loved her.
She's really, really fun to watch. And I think she's also just super relatable. I just think this idea of, because she's not a bad person. Like there's like that sweet interaction that she has with Paul when Paul like gets her school work from being suspended. And, she's like, I don't want you to fall behind. Last time that you got suspended, it took you so long to catch back up. And they have a really sweet little interaction in that moment. So I don't feel like it's fair to just label her as like this rebel without a cause that's just this pure chaotic energy. She definitely is that, but I also feel like she kind of just like wants to be loved, right? Like that's kind of her big goal. Like she's a big lover. In one moment it's Lisa on the swing with the big smile, and I forget her new girlfriend's name at the very end, but like the montage is like the exact same. So it's just like basically just reinserted Jennifer into Lisa's spot. But I really think she is fun to watch, and she kind of feels like a little bit of an icebreaker to a lot of the like darkness in the movie as well.
Oh yeah. Yeah, her decision to take the fall for Tracy's crime of destroying all the posters, that caught me a little off guard, but then you see it made sense to me later on of, okay, she's getting sent to this all-girls school that she had been staring at. So,
Yeah.
and to your point, she is sort of closeted because she makes the point of, I'm not a lesbian, I'm just into girls, or something
Yes.
like that early on in the movie.
I'm
And
attracted to the person. It just so happens that all of the people that I'm attracted to are girls. So yeah, it's like she's not fully there yet of like ready to have that like self-acceptance. And then Lisa, I think I'm not quite sure how you would identify her kind of journey, because she says to Tammy, we're just experimenting. So it almost kind of seems like maybe it was just that. Maybe the stuff with Paul is kind of what she feels, because then she moves on to another guy after Paul. But, who knows? There's not really enough information there to go off of it. But with Tammy, she's, it feels almost like if once she's at Sacred Heart, she kind of like settles into herself a little bit more.
yeah, she seems happy.
Yeah.
And Paul was totally cool with Lisa just going with his football buddy.
Nothing phases Paul.
He's so sweet. Yeah, he's just like, you have my blessing. It's fine. It's fine.
Yeah. They had an awesome party, so he's good.
Yeah.
Did you say
I
this
really
is
love
Chris
him.
Klein's first film?
It is, yes.
That's crazy. I did not know that. He's so excellent in it. He really he just plays that. It's actually pretty hard to play like someone who's sort of a little vacant, and he does a really good job. Very just sweet. And we haven't mentioned that he's the deciding vote in the election, because he doesn't vote for himself.
He is. Yeah, you're right.
He couldn't do it. Couldn't bring himself to check his own name.
I love him. I think he's a doll.
Yeah, Alexander Payne. He found him during his senior year in high school. He's playing Tony in West Side Story.
No.
And so he speaks to Chris Klein and says, hey, I've got this role. And I forget where Chris was going to college at the time. But
amazing.
Yeah, he gets called back for this role. So that's
so cool.
He nailed it first time. It's Matthew Lillard doing Scream. His girlfriend was the one that was auditioning. And they just pull in Matthew Lillard, say, hey, we've got a job for you. And it's just an iconic performance. We did have a different ending to this movie. The original screening was not popular at all. So instead of Jim going to New York, he is selling used cars, and he's working for a former student. He does have an encounter with Tracy, though, and Tracy forgives him, and she asks Jim to sign her yearbook. Do you like this alternate ending, or do you like what we have?
I think I like what we have, because I think we get a little taste. And in fact, I wish we'd almost gotten a tiny bit more of a taste of what happens to Tracy, and the fact that she's now working for this government someone.
Oh yeah.
So I think that's a stronger ending because it gives us more. I mean, I think they're similar in a way. I don't hate the other ending, but I like him. That moment where he throws the Slurpee or whatever at the
Yes.
car and then just runs away like some vandal. I mean, it just is. It's perfect. So I'm
It
glad they
is
went
so
that way.
pathetic. I have to imagine Tracy
great.
goes very far, like staffer and everything else.
Right.
but-
I think she gets what she wants. Yeah.
That scene is so perfect because it almost like perfectly puts the point that I was making earlier of how like I think he really wants to be nice, and so he's like, you know what, he's trying to talk himself into, I'm really happy now, and I've got all, you know, I'm in New York and blah blah blah, and you know, it looks like she got everything that she wanted, and I'm really happy for her about that. And then he slowly just, you hear his train of thought, and then it leads to like, what the? Then he just throws the Slurpee. It's
Temper
so
tantrum
funny.
like a child. Yeah.
It's amazing. You just see his like true colors come out, and then he, like you said, he's just deep down just this pathetic guy, and it's great.
He is trying to make the best of that apartment, which 100% is not going to cost $1,500 in 2023. Like, that little 200 square foot apartment is going to be running you $3-4 grand
Yeah.
for where he was.
It's ridiculous.
But yeah, he's showing that. So this election is a original manuscript from Tom Peretta. It was unpublished in 1996. And like I said, Alexander Payne, who was approached, he was disinterested at first because it was set in a high school. This isn't a high school story per se. So what attracted Payne was the formal exercise of doing these multiple points of view. So you've got Tracy, you've got Jim, and you've got Paul, and these multiple voiceovers. I feel like Matthew Broderick for the Ferris Bueller's Day Off, like he has that voiceover style prepared. So that was great casting. We talked about Ross Perot as the inspiration, but the other inspiration is 1992 at Memorial High School in, I believe it's pronounced Eau Claire, Wisconsin. There is a pregnant student that won homecoming queen in an election, but the staff announced a different winner and burned the ballots to cover it up. What a scandal. I don't know if those teachers had to resign or not. That's far lower stakes. Like you said, Lizzy, there, who knows what was going into that vote? Maybe she was super popular and sweet, or maybe this was the anarchy vote.
Yeah, you never know.
Kids are kids, but like, who cares? Who cares? Homecoming king and queen. I could tell you our queen, but I have no idea who was our homecoming king.
Can I ask a genuine question? Because I actually don't know the answer to this. What does a class president do?
They plan prom, and then they are responsible for any of the reunions.
Oh, interesting. My high school closed down a few years after I graduated, so I guess that's why I have no idea. Great.
Yeah, I ran every year for it, but those were the major things. And then there were a few fundraising activities that they were responsible for as well. I don't even know that I cared that much about it. I wanted to be elected for something. I was the pathetic Tracy Flick side. I just couldn't get in. So we mentioned the film's original ending. It was lost, except for there was a box of VHS tapes at a yard sale in 2011. So that is how we found out about the original ending with Tracy. I do like the kind of jab of sign my yearbook because she would have been class president in that yearbook.
It's fair. That's true.
And we do get a fun little Easter egg in this movie. At one point, there's a gentleman reading in a newspaper. And if you pause the movie at that point, the text on the newspaper says, instead of reading this, why not put on Citizen Ruth, which is Alexander Payne's first directorial debut. Oh, cool. And then it talks about, do you have any idea how difficult it is to make up fake text for a movie?
I love
awesome.
So if this was too dark for you, please do not watch Citizen Ruth. That is a far darker movie. It's still a black comedy, but it covers a much more controversial topic. The subject of that is abortion. But Alexander Payne, I mentioned Sideways, he does About Schmidt, The Descendants, not the Disney movie that kids are watching. This is a very different movie. Nebraska, again, he does a lot of his movies set in Omaha. Downsizing and The Holdovers. Have you seen much of Alexander Payne's work, Laura?
Sideways is one of my favorite movies.
Oh, I'm sorry.
So it's okay. We have different tastes.
Yes.
And I have seen The Descendants. I don't think I've seen Nebraska, and I definitely haven't seen Downsizing or The Holdovers. But Sideways to me is like a perfect film.
He does have a new project coming out. I just saw a trailer with Paul Giamatti. I don't remember what it's called,
how fun.
But I'm excited. I do love Paul Giamatti, so I will see it. Lizzy, are you a fan? I know you saw Nebraska, right?
I don't think I've seen any of his movies. I haven't even seen Sideways. I know that's so bad. I get like my movie card revoked, but no, I have not. I guess is my only one.
I do need to see Nebraska. We just covered the top movies of 2013. We just covered the decade past.
Yes.
And so Nebraska came up a lot for awards and otherwise. So I'll check it out. I'm batting about 50-50 with Alexander Payne. I'll definitely check out his new film. As far as sets, we did talk about, this is actually filmed in Omaha, Nebraska. It's Carver High School. There are real classes going on while they're filming this. So the background noises, those are teachers teaching their students. This is not
that's
extras or anything. They filmed around their schedule. So that's pretty cool. Primarily shot on location in the fall of '97. Let's talk about the wardrobe, because they are doing a fantastic job of kind of conveying what especially Jim and Tracy's life is like through their wardrobe. Laura, what'd you think of
Sometimes
wardrobe and costumes?
in my mind, I think of this as a Catholic high school movie, maybe partly because of the Immaculate Heart, but also because of Tracy Flick's overall style, like the skirts and it's all and her hair is always perfectly done. She's just Little Miss, has it all together. I love the costumes. We can talk about Matthew Broderick and the bee sting.
Oh my goodness!
Oh my gosh!
Favorite parts of the movie. There's a brilliant shot. Shout out to the cinematographer of the bees, like hovering around as he's knocking on the affair partner's window, trying to get her attention. So we get like a little preview of the bees before they actually sting him, and then
nice.
The sting. Just that whole look for me, the whole end of the movie, his eyes swelling up and that giant overcoat. Everything is sad and not going well for him. It's just perfect. They really made it, even his eyes like still a little open, but it's just very hard to look at. And they have the kids come in and they're like, what's wrong with you? Just everything about it. They did a great job, wardrobe and makeup, everything.
As he just shoves that cupcake in a very weird way into his mouth. Yes.
He is so massively unhinged at the end of the movie, which is so fun to watch. But I agree. I mean, Tracy's outfits, they put everybody in like really hyperbolic 90s clothes, because then Tammy is in like the flannel, and does Paul wear, at one point, I think he is in a leather jacket, and then I think he takes it off later. So they're kind of all in like their quintessential high school thing. So it very Breakfast Club vibes, like you said earlier, where they're really trying to drive the point home that the jock is the jock and the burnout is the burnout, and so forth and so on. But it only just adds, because I think that this movie was written for adults wanting to look back on their high school experience and have a laugh. I think that those elements only just add to it. Like the stereotypical pieces just almost enrich the nostalgia of it all.
Yeah, Laura nailed it as far as the costumes for me. They did a great job of making Tracy look stuffy and just very put together, very prim and proper. And Jim, there's a fantastic scene where he's just, it adds to this pathetic character, but how he sees himself. So he's in this black suit with the sunglasses and he's driving this convertible and just, he's like, I am the smoothest guy ever. And then we get a great cut and it's him in lower middle class teaching attire. Just imagine your classes in the 90s if you're of age. That's Jim, and he's getting out of like a Toyota Tercel. It's not a sexy car at all. It's just it's a perfect picture of lower middle class America, and I like those types of juxtapositions of, okay, here's how I view myself. And then we get wonderful 90s giant pink bathrooms. Linda's bathroom was wall-to-wall pink, just like a Pepto-Bismol exploded. That is fantastic. This is an MTV movie, so I will mention soundtrack. Does the music do anything for you here? I didn't really have much notes for it.
I enjoyed it. I'm trying to think of anything stand out. I mean, I think they did some good stuff with momentum and the soundtrack. There's a great use of the song Jennifer when Jennifer is introduced. But other than that, you're right. There wasn't something that I thought was like a huge soundtrack moment.
I love every single time that Tracy becomes unhinged, they play that same like kind of music, right?
Very tribal, yes.
Yes, where it's just showing like this person who is so buttoned up is like their animalistic side is about to come out and they're just going to go in a full rage. And it just makes it so much more funny because like you guys were saying, like she's so buttoned up. And I think the people who are kind of wound the tightest tend to be the people that have the biggest outbursts when the big, things just don't go their way. And so I think that just that music is so chaotic and it's so memorable. And I that part I really love. But aside from that, I agree. There's not really a lot going on with the music in the movie.
I'd forgotten about that sound effect, but you're right. It is hilarious. And it just makes me think of when she's doing those buttons. And I had no idea that's how you did campaign buttons, but she has that button press that's just aggressive thump. Right. Are you all ready to hand out some awards?
Yes, let's do it.
Okay. Laura, we'll start with you. MVP of election. It can be a director, actor, supporting actor, something else.
I'm going to have to give it to Reese. I think she makes the movie. She's what I remembered, and it's just such a great character. She did, even just the way she walks or runs, especially to different places. She just got it so perfectly. So yeah, I can't imagine anyone else in that role.
She's so young in this role.
She looks like 10.
They view this as one of her breakthroughs. We did mention Cruel Intentions and Pleasantville. I think were both a year before.
Yes, I love Pleasantville.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, she's so great so early on in her career.
Mm-hmm.
Lizzy, who do you have?
I went with Alexander Payne. I tend to kind of follow suit with you sometimes, Chad, where like when I feel like the pieces of the puzzle fall into place, then I want to give the credit to the director. So I think he did a great job with casting. I think that the writing is so clever, and I just think the whole movie comes together so well. And it really does feel like a recipe that he just got right.
Right, for the sake of being different, because I did tend to go with the director here. It's my role. When everything goes right, I pick the director, but I'm bored of that, so I'm picking Matthew Broderick.
Nice.
I think his character is incredibly dislikable. He's pathetic, but the mannerisms that Matthew brings into Jim, they're just so entertaining. And it's what kept me from completely writing this character off and just wishing the worst. I kept wishing for him to pull back and just turn around, right the ship. He never does. But he's still got that kind of chipper attitude of, now I'm a tour guide in New York. I've always wanted to be in New York, and I'm teaching again. And
it's like, who are you trying to convince?
right. He's going to break down in more destructive ways later on. We get that great montage of him slightly changing his tone as he explains the 3 branches of government every single time.
Yes.
And that's just great subtleties of, okay, this is really wearing thin year after year after year. Best supporting actor, Laura.
Okay, I'm going to give it to Tammy, who I believe is Jessica Campbell.
Yeah.
I just think she's really fun, but I want to give an honorable mention to the custodian, who is Lauren Nelson. It's such a great moment, and he has nothing to say, but like it's so powerful. He's just there at that first moment of the movie, and then at this huge climactic scene at the end. And that actor did a great job with his little piece of the film.
That was such a great gag of him just standing in the hallway as the Chinese container misses and lands on the floor.
It's great writing too. It's excellent writing.
Yes. I was so happy.
Callback.
Because you've had time to forget him too. You forget completely about him, and then he shows up with the waist spin. Good for that guy.
It's so funny.
Lizzy, who's your best supporting?
This is where I went with Reese Witherspoon. I think she is the shining star of this movie. And even though in some ways some could argue that she is the antagonist, I also just think that you love her. Like, you cannot help but fall in love with her. Even if you dislike her character, Reese is just so magnanimous to watch. And she just does an amazing job.
Yeah, she is remarkable. I went with Chris Klein as Paul Metzler.
Nice.
I really felt that naive kindness is what made this film feel different for me than some of these others that I'm just watching kind of despicable characters do despicable things over and over. And I get it in this car wreck mentality of, I don't really want to be watching this, but I can't turn away. No, Paul is wonderful. He has so many great lines, and even when he's talking, you're still my sister, even if you're adopted. He means it so sweetly, but it's such a backhanded.
Oh, it's funny.
Hidden gem, Laura. Who's your underappreciated cast?
I think it's the vice principal for me.
Okay.
Is it the principal or the vice principal that we see several times? I think he's a vice principal, yes.
Walt, the guy that's yelling at the kids all the time.
Yeah,
that's the principal.
Oh,
that's
okay,
Phil Reeves.
Yeah. So he, for me, he's just good for a laugh, and again, another small part but big impact.
Yeah, I loved him. He was my choice too. He's exactly that kind of overbearing adult you want in this scenario, and it really did call me back to the vice principal in Breakfast Club. Just how he lectures.
Yeah.
Yes.
Like, that little bitch ruined the election. It was just a great.
Yeah. Hey, Lizzy, who's your hidden gem?
So I actually went with an element for this one. So hang with me here. So Tracy mentions early on in the film that Coke, she's like, well, Coke is the biggest soda brand in ever, but they also do the most marketing, right? So then shortly after, maybe 2 or 3 scenes later, you see that Jim is drinking a Pepsi. And so that's almost to send kind of a subliminal message of if Tracy is the Coke, Jim is the Pepsi. If he is not going this traditional route, he's going to be the nice guy. He's going to be the good character. Because at this point, you do think that he is the moral high ground of this movie. And then when things start going sour, when he starts having kind of inappropriate fantasies while he's with his wife and kind of like almost like drinking the Kool-Aid a little bit. He opens up his fridge and it's like a blink if you miss it, but his fridge is filled with Coke. And so you're like, ooh, okay, hold on, we've switched. And then at the very end of the movie, when it almost seems like he's trying to get his life back in order, he's holding a cup of Pepsi. So I really thought that like that, I didn't know if I ever got a chance to pick Alexander Payne's brain. I would imagine that was all very intentional, but it was just kind of an interesting element that kind of caught my eye this time watching it.
I love it so much that you followed that, because all I noticed was the Pepsi. I was like, I like Pepsi better than Coke, and I was just sad for him because you've ruined Pepsi for him. But then he does the weird thing, like he leaves his wife and goes downstairs and is watching porn. Just like, this is not a healthy thing for you. But yeah, I will have to watch this background plot of Pepsi versus Coke. That is brilliant analysis. That's why I love this podcast.
Yeah.
All right, recast. We're replacing one member. Who are you replacing, Laura?
No one.
No one.
I won't do it. I think this was really well cast, and I really enjoyed everyone. So
it was an excellent cast. You got to recast, like, just throw in a random high school. Throw Chris Evans as one of the students.
Right. Yeah.
Lizzy, who's your recast?
This was really hard because I agree with you, Laura. I think that like this was just so excellently done. I did choose, just for fun, to replace the principal with Ed Rooney, just because I felt like it would be maybe – I loved the principal's character, but I thought maybe having the principal from Ferris Bueller be the same principal, like that maybe that would either throw out there that maybe this is some kind of like alternate universe where they're all the same, but also just for like a nod to people that love Ferris Bueller. And I just really like Ed Rooney. I think he does that like chaotic, crazy person so well. So like he would have brought an awesome energy to that character.
I love it. I went with Colleen Camp. She is Tracy's mother, and I thought she did a wonderful job. But if I have to recast someone, I kind of want a little bit more overbearing, and that there are very few women that can do it better than Christine Baranski. So she can just bring that belittling energy. And so I went Christine Baranski.
Your mother's beside yourself. I love that. And in that moment, she's like completely quiet. That one got me.
Best shots. We've already had a shout out to our cinematographer, who is James Glennon, by the way. He is a buddy of Alexander Payne. He works with him on Citizen Ruth, Election, and About Schmidt. So best shot, Laura.
I love the shot where Tracy first hears when she's snooping that she's won the election, and she's just jumping around in front of her own campaign sign, and it's just like a bunny hop. It's just perfectly composed, and yeah, it was hilarious.
And Jim knows something has gone wrong.
Yes.
As it freeze frames. I think that was right over like a teaching certificate too. It might have been an award.
Yeah. It's his teacher of the year, I think.
Yes, funny. That is fantastic. Lizzy?
So I actually went with a scene that made my stomach turn, but I think that's probably why I put it there. But in the early beginning of the movie, when they're breaking down the relationship and how things exactly went down between Tracy and Dave, they show her at their house, and she's like walking down this hallway towards, I'm assuming, like what we can imagine is Dave's bedroom that he shares with his wife at the time, Linda. And she turns towards the bedroom, and all you see is Dave's arm, and he puts it on top of Reese's shoulder. And that scene, first of all, like really gave me like a pit in my stomach. But I think why I chose it for my best shot was because kind of what we're talking about earlier with like the Me Too movement, that kind of felt like the only real recognition that she was being led into something like that. It's like everything else, I think, tried to pin it as if Tracy was almost this like predatory student, like that's just, Dave is just, he can't resist her, her successful ambition and all of that. When in reality, like when you're that young, you don't have the faculties to be able to understand what's going on, and you look to your superiors. So I think that was like the only scene that really, I think, put that responsibility on him of like, he's leading her into this situation. And I don't know, something about that like kind of stuck with me. It felt very serious, but it was still a powerful scene nonetheless.
That was early on. I was praying for misdirection because he says a very crude line when he's talking to Jim about her getting so wet. And I'm like, please be talking about your wife or a cat or something else.
Something, like literally anything else.
Yeah.
Like, please.
Yeah. My next note is, oh no, it's actually what I thought. And they go so far as to say it's her junior year. So it's made clear she's not 18.
Yeah.
This is a crime.
She is young. Yeah. And she's too young.
And to your point, they do that creep. This is a song I completely forgot till you mentioned. I tried to repress it. He's playing once, twice, three times a lady.
Yes.
Oh my
to a
gosh.
child.
And the
in
baby,
his
the
house.
crib is right next to him. His own child's crib is like perfectly.
Yes.
Yes. It's just really, really slimy. And I think pre Me Too movement, it was like we would almost like, we would never victimize, I think, the men in the way that we do now. It's like that understanding of like, they're really, especially with someone like that in a position of power over you, like there's just an influence there, and there's a responsibility for both men and women when they're in positions of power like that with students. And so it made it so slimy watching it as an adult.
Oh my goodness, I forgot about the crib too. Yeah, it's a masterpiece of making you feel miserable.
Yeah, it's messed up, like really messed up.
Yep. All right. Mine is also about infidelity, I suppose, is when Jim leaves his house after Diane finds out. And we have that precursor to this where he's just in his fridge and he hears a baby crying and he knows immediately, okay, that's bad news. That means Linda's here. And he just slowly walks off. But he goes outside his house and he's got a 1,000-yard stare. And the camera pans up over him and he's just in shock at what's become of his life, and just it's completely unraveled. So that I felt bad and I didn't simultaneously with that shot of what have I done.
That's a good one.
Best scene, Laura?
I actually, the same scene that you're just talking about, when Jim goes in and he sees that his wife and his affair partner are having this conversation, and he just has this moment where he says, okay, and then and that's all there is to say. I mean, I thought that was perfect. It just like not too much. Very, very well acted by Matthew Broderick as well. And also by the two women. They like there's a lot going on there, and neither of them have any lines, and they really conveyed like this big moment between them in a short amount of time very powerfully. So
yeah, absolutely. His wife with those tears, like the just complete red on her face, and she does an excellent job, to your point, with zero verbal communication. It's just all through eyes, and then okay. That is great.
It is what it is.
Lizzy?
Yeah. I love the speeches. That's just my particularly Paul's speech. It's just like the humor and just being able to like just, okay, well, everybody, thank you so much for voting me. If you vote me into president, then I promise that I won't let you down like that time that I threw the football. Like it's just like he's reading it so
horribly read. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. I remember laughing at that so hard the first time I watched this movie, and that particular scene holds up in humor. It's amazing.
Yeah, that was how my 6-year-old read her books, and I had to teach her the period means stop, take a breath, you want to, and then Paul just goes full 6-year-old. It
It's
is
amazing.
fantastic. And then we get crickets immediately afterwards. What was that? But then Tammy's speech, I do love that, of no more stupid assemblies. I'm going to burn down student government, which, by the way, student council president cannot do that. You cannot say
You
that.
cannot dismantle.
Only planning prom, apparently.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Even Tracy's, like, with our days, we cannot make them longer, but we can make them better. And like they're just the cadence of like her mouth and how she slams her mouth shut with every word. And it's an awesome scene.
It is a masterclass in annoying me. Yes. We mentioned it earlier, but the contrasting prayers for me, I thought that was all so well done. Tracy is straight up insisting that Jesus help her with the election. She is demanding the big man. She just presents her demands to him. It's this arrogant prayer. Tammy is swearing. She's wishing ill on multiple people, and she concludes by asking to be friends with Madonna. These are just such great character moments. And then there's Paul, who is thanking God for literally every circumstance possible in life, and throws in that he's very thankful for what he's been told is a very large penis. It's
Yes.
like, it's not bragging. He's
No.
just going down a list, and it's all so well done and so
Yes.
funny.
Thank you for all of my sins, for whatever they are, like, or something
Yes.
like that. Where he's
Yeah.
again, like, it's just so sweet.
Yeah, Tammy's just like, hey, since I don't believe in you, but since I'm going to Catholic school, I might as well practice. It's all so good. Right. Best wardrobe and makeup moment, Laura.
I have to go back to the bee sting. I just really loved it. It's so gross, and it's a perfect like physical manifestation of it's all over my face, and I can't hide it anymore.
It is so grotesque. Lizzy, what was yours?
Tracy's hair. I think her hair is just so pretty. It's so wound, like the Susie Q kind of curls, or Shirley Temple, I should say, like just so tight. And it's just a perfect representation of her personality. Like I love it so much. She had to work really hard to get those curls so tight, and they're not extremely attractive because they make her look so childlike, but I love also that they're just, again, it's just like a representation of who she is. It's very Tracy flick.
That's what makes that sex scene with Jim and his wife so much worse.
Yeah.
And she's just saying in family-friendly podcast, so I can't say it, but she's we'll go with boink me, but that's not the word she's using over and over and over again in that very enunciated way.
Yes.
I'm going with the bee sting too. What a great job from the makeup crew. Like it's going that way. He gets stung right on the eye. Like, that's gonna be bad. But it is just so much worse than anything. And it just makes his interactions with everyone who's asking a genuine question. Like, what happened to your face? It's just a bee sting.
Yeah.
He's not concerned with it really. I think he put ice on it at one point, but put Neosporin, do something to it, get it treated, get it lanced. I don't know. Change one thing. Laura, are you changing anything for this movie?
I mean, probably not, but I think selfishly, I do wish there was one more interaction between Tracy and Jim at the end. And, that alternate ending with the yearbook maybe would have done it for me. But yeah, I kind of wanted her to get out of that limo and really give it to him. But I think that's an audience selfishness feeling. It's probably not the right decision for the film. So
I want that too. I do. I want that interaction because I could see her just viewing him as insignificant. I don't think she's going to hold a grudge. She got what she wanted.
Like, what if she doesn't even really remember him? It's like that where she's like so paramount in his history, but she's off doing it. So yeah, a little moment extra.
That's exactly it. He is a blip on her radar where she is everything to his life.
Yep, that's right.
Lizzy, what are you changing?
Mine was kind of similar. I had liked the idea when they get pauses right on her face at the very end in the scene that you guys are talking about, when he's like, I'll never know if she saw me that day. And I would have loved to then have one more kind of monologue of Tracy, where like she's in the car, she's talking, where you're trying to understand if this really is this relationship that she's having right now with this senator, governor, whatever he is. Is it a clean relationship, like a respectful working relationship, or are we repeating a pattern? And then also, like, I would have loved, like, and I'm assuming that was happening, but what I really wanted was in the car for her to acknowledge whether or not she saw him, like hoping to be like, yeah, I saw him. Like, I knew he saw me. And just kind of to have like one more punch, almost, because you guys said it perfectly, this idea of like she's so beyond him, but he is such a huge, or she is such a gigantic part of his story. And so almost having that internal satisfaction where she acknowledges that and feels that. And I think that would have been good.
It's interesting that you bring that up, because I had the same thought, unfortunately. Given her history, is this on the up and up with the representative from Nebraska? Or is this another, at least she's an adult, but is this another inappropriate relationship? I hope not.
Funny, I didn't think that at all until you said it. I thought, oh, she's got like an internship or something.
Yeah.
But it's interesting.
Maybe that's just my own dark mind then.
Right. Yeah. No, but I mean, it's a good point. As soon as you said it, I was like, oh, you know what? It's entirely possible. I mean, we all know the history of.
Yeah. And it wouldn't even be her fault, really. Because like they say earlier that she has she doesn't have a father figure. And like that line is like kind of funny when she's like, psychologically speaking, like, you
Yes.
think that this is because I don't have a dad, but it's not. Mm-hmm. He just makes me feel really safe. And so like that, kind of like the lack of self-awareness in that statement was funny. But I think, when you're that young, I imagine if something like that happens to you, that really does kind of define how you can form relationships. So it's like, if that is something that happens, like I still have like a lot of empathy for her. Like, I don't look at her as like anything other than just like a girl who kind of was told at a very young age, this is what you're good for. And unfortunately, when you're told that kind of stuff at a young age, you can't shake it.
Yeah. Having a daughter, it's like you hope it's a healthy relationship now, but you've such a young age, it was tarnished in a direction you don't want it to go.
Yep.
So hopefully, yeah. Hopefully it's a less dark ending, but maybe that's open-ended for a reason. I had a tough time on this one. I had a tough time changing anything, which is rare for this type of movie. I'm going to do something nitpicky. So at one point, we see Tracy using this really early version of Photoshop, and she's altering the yearbook, editing out Dave.
Yeah.
I was convinced we were showing this for a reason, and it was going to be relevant later in the film because they dedicated a decent amount of time to it. And I really wish it'd come back into play, much like the Chinese food on the floor and the janitor. Maybe just framing Tammy for posters or trying to get someone else out of the election, using it for some form of nefarious purpose, just so we see her spiraling. But the worst she does is tear down some posters in a fit of rage. I wanted a little bit more.
Interesting.
Yeah, no, that's a good one. I could see that for sure. How the posters maybe aren't quite in alignment with the crime that we want everybody to pay for.
Although Lisa's really outraged, and Paul is fine with it.
Yeah,
He's
whatever,
like,
it's fine.
Yeah, we've still got one or two, and they're all acting very, very seriously. How are people going to know who to vote for if we don't have posters?
Yeah.
It's the most important thing in the world.
Right.
This is a very quotable movie. This is probably a tough choice, but best quote for you, Laura.
All right. So as a screenwriter, I always start with theme, and that's the thing that's the most important to me when I'm writing. So I picked You Can't Interfere with Destiny. That's why it's destiny. And if you try to interfere, the same thing's going to happen anyway, and you just suffer. And to me, that just states the whole premise of the film, which I think is lovely. It's not like beating you over the head with it, but you know early on that like this is a story about someone who's going to suffer for trying to interfere with destiny.
Yes, very fatalistic quote
Yes.
there.
Mhm.
Lizzy, what's your quote?
There was a lot of really, really good lines to choose from. But for whatever reason, when, at this point, his life is in shambles. Like he's already calling Linda, being like, "You ruined my life." He's got the eye and like everything is just done for him. The election has happened and they're counting the votes. And he walks in as Larry is just finishing up counting. And he's like, "So who won?" He's like, "I'm not supposed to tell you who won." He's like, "Larry, we're not electing the effing Pope here. So tell me who won." We're like, whatever. Because it's like in the very beginning of the movie, he tries so hard. And again, it's like, who are you trying to convince? He tries to drive the point home so much. Like, I am the teacher that these kids can lean on and these kids can trust. And I take my job so seriously, not just about teaching them, but about really fostering them through such a crucial time in their childhood. And then to go from that, like, we're not electing the effing Pope, just tell me you won, just feels so funny because he's just fully unhinged now and letting it all hang out. And that line tickled me.
Yeah, these poor kids, like, they're taking so many kids you really want taking their job seriously, and then all these kids are super serious about completely irrelevant things. I'm going with another theme of the movie, and I thought this was great throughout. Jim says, "I'm not talking about ethics, I'm talking about morals." And Dave doesn't get it. He says, "What's the difference?"
Yeah.
Because
It's a good one.
Dave has violated both, and then Jim winds up violating both.
Violating both. That's right.
Yeah.
All right. Before we get into our ratings, Laura, do you want to tell us again where we can find out more about your latest efforts and where we can follow you?
Sure. You can find me on laurahunterdrago.com, which has links to everything else I've done. I have a feature film that's available for free on Tubi called To the New Girl, and a new podcast, as I mentioned, called The Crime at Camp Ashwood. And then, I'm like at Laura Hunter Drago pretty much everywhere else. So come say hi.
Wonderful.
Cool.
Wonderful. Please do that. Awesome guest. So we rate at the round table. We are 0 to 5 stars with half-star increments. Laura, we will start with you. What are you giving Election?
I'm going to give it a 4.
Very good. Very good. Lizzy, where'd you come at?
I go with a 4 as well. I think that there's certain elements of this movie that can put a little bit of a sour taste in my mouth. And so that is kind of the main reasoning for that 1 point deduction. But I really feel like overall this movie is smart and it's really clever and funny. And I don't at all leave this movie with this warm, fuzzy feeling. Not even a little bit, but I do leave just feeling like I've had a lot of really good laughs. And it's a really rewatchable movie. And it's something that I feel like everybody should kind of have in their repertoire. And it's kind of a classic. So definitely 4 stars for me.
I'm going to make it 3 for 3. I went 4 stars as well. And
Nice.
You stole all of my adjectives because I had smart, funny, and it's a really good time. So this was new to me, and despite the dark material, I still had a good time. I think it's rewatchable. Where some of these movies, it's just I wallow, and then when the credits roll, I'm just blankly staring at the screen, like, all right, well, my evening's ruined. I'm just I'm going to stare at a wall for an hour and then go to bed. This didn't do that to me. And even as we're talking about this movie, this makes me happy remembering all these scenes that made me laugh. So this is great. And we are going to keep in this kind of fun, jolly type season. Lizzy, do you want to help us pick a movie for next time?
Yes. So Halloween's over, right? So for people like me, you're breaking out your Christmas stuff. right away, unlike my husband who insists that it's done after Thanksgiving.
Yep, your
But-
husband is correct.
but we're going to do some Christmas movies. So option 1, The Christmas Star from 1986. A counterfeiter finds the true meaning of the holidays. Option number 2, Christmas Vacation from 1989. The Griswold family plans for a big Christmas, predictably, but it turns into a huge disaster. Or option number 3, Scrooged from 1988. A selfish, cynical television executive is haunted by 3 spirits bearing lessons on Christmas Eve.
We have done 2 Bill Murray movies this year in Caddyshack and What About Bob, and I'm going to make it 3.
Yes!
I'm going Scrooge from
Love Bill
1988.
Murray.
You guys can write in and tell us which is your favorite. Or, someone could finally suggest Ghostbusters. How we haven't had this.
Right,
on this
I know.
podcast. Why does no one suggest Ghostbusters? So, Laura, thank you so much for joining us. This has been a lot of fun. This was a fun movie to cover.
Thanks for having me, guys. It's been really fun.
Yep. Thank you, Lizzy. Thank you, all the lords, ladies, and knights of the Retro Movie Roundtable. We want you to reach out to us. We want to hear from you when you have nice things to say about us. Subscribe, rate, review us on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Pandora, wherever you get podcasts. Subscribe to us on YouTube. It's not our faces, it's our voices, but that's still a great thing. Go to Facebook, follow us on Instagram, Twitter at movie_retro. Email us at retromovieroundtable@yahoo.com. And finally, you can give us money because this is not free to do. It is fun, though. We are on Patreon, patreon.com/retromovieroundtable. Any contributions are very much appreciated. They help go to make this show better for you, the listeners. So as always, thank you guys for listening. Be good to each other and watch more movies. Lizzy?
What? Like it's hard?